Math 7, Unit 7, Lesson 4. Experimental probability. Creating a probability model. Bag of blocks. You'll need your bag of blocks worksheet for this lesson. A limitation of theoretical probability is that sometimes you don't know what is under the hood that would help calculate the probabilities we would like to study. Or the calculations involve too much chaos for us to accurately forecast. For example, calculating the probability of a successful free throw shot. Calculating the probability of getting a quarter in change that was minted before 2010. The probability of getting heads on a lopsided coin, a coin that's not a fair coin, but it's going to be more likely to land on one side or the other. So all of these three examples given, we don't really have a good way of getting the theoretical probability because we don't have direct access to that. We have to do some experimentation to figure it out. Experimental probabilities are based on data collected and can be used to create a probability model for these types of situations. The probability model allows you to estimate probabilities for situations for which you do not know the favorable outcomes and total outcomes and how they are weighted. So for example here, the probability of a successful free throw shot, that does vary from person to person with different skill levels. And what you would do is you would have a person attempt free throw shots several times and then use that data to make a probability model to calculate the probability of making a successful free throw shot. The probability of getting a quarter in change minted before 2010. Again, to get a good idea of the actual theoretical probability here, you'd have to collect some data, create a probability model from that data to calculate your probabilities, which they would be experimental probabilities. That last one, heads on a lopsided coin, you would just want to do a lot of experiments with that lopsided coin and collect a lot of data so you can create a probability model. Okay, so experimental probability is the ratio of the number of times an outcome occurs to the total number of trials. So there you have the formula, experimental probability. How many times something occurs divided by the number of trials. So on the free throw example, if let's say that you attempted a free throw 100 times and you made it 55 times, this would be the experimental probability of you making a free throw. About 55% would be the probability, a little bit better than half. Of course, if your skill level is better than that, you could have a higher number, and if it is lower, you would have a lower probability. Okay, a couple of important vocabulary words. Frequency is the number of times something happens. Relative frequency is how often something happens divided by the number of trials. Interestingly enough, the term relative frequency means mostly the same thing as experimental probability. It's how many times something happens compared by the total number of times anything happens. Experimental probability is probability calculated on collected data. Theoretical probability is calculated with the assumption of equally likely outcomes where the outcomes are known. Experimental probabilities tend to approach the theoretical probabilities with a large number of trials. When theoretical probabilities are not known, experimental probabilities can be used to create a probability model. Now what you're going to be working on here is the bag of blocks assignment. Now, since you are not in your regular classroom, you will not have access to these bags of blocks. There's 4 bags, bag A, B, C, and D. They are paper bags. I've recorded 4 different videos, about 2 minutes each, where I draw 25 times from each bag. When I draw a block, I will show you and say the color, and then I put it back in the bag and I draw another block. Now you do not know how many blocks are in the bag. You don't know what colors the blocks are in the bag. The only information you're going to have about what's in the bag is the 25 draws that I will do in those other 4 videos, which will be linked to this video in the description. So your bag of blocks worksheet, 4 bags contain colored blocks. Create an experimental probability model for each bag by randomly drawing a block, recording the color, and replacing the block. Continue until you have recorded 25 trials for each bag, then answer the questions on the bag. So as you watch the 4 different videos, which should take you about 8 or 9 minutes to complete that, you will just write your color in here. As in the video, as I go through the colors, you would just write it here, and you start making tally marks as you hear it. If you hear another color that I haven't mentioned yet, you would just put it right under that. Anyway, that is the idea, and you'll go through those 4 different probability things. Oops, that didn't move like I expected it to. And that will be it. You'll gather your data, and then there are questions on the back for you to complete. Thanks for watching.